It's now known that 3 mothers from Bradford, thought to be in Syria with their 9 children, had made previous attempt to travel to the Middle East.
Now, documents, these ones, show that the 12 family members were booked on a flight from Manchester to Jeddah on March 19th.
But they were stopped and questioned by police and subsequently missed their flight. The trip was rebooked, and on the 28th of May, they finally flew to Jeddah on a Saudi Arabian flight.
Well, a few days after arriving, the family changed its plans and moved hotels in Mecca. It was due to fly home on the 11th of June, but none of them boarded the plane. Let's talk to Tony Smith, who's the former head of UK Border Force, and going to talk to us more about this. And thank you very much for joining us on Breakfast this morning. Is this a case of a family slipping through the net? Because it sounds quite unusual that they were questioned, the family was questioned by security authorities, and yet still managed to board a plane just a few days later.
Well, this is a really difficult area for the police and the law enforcement agencies because obviously we get vast numbers of people travelling out through the border. We don't have routine exit checks in this country. We don't stop and question everybody because that would be impracticable. So what we have is what's called intelligence-led checks, which does enable police officers and border force officers to stop people if there are reasons to suspect that something's not right. There may be terrorism intent on inbound and outbound. So it appears, you know, as you say, that they were stopped in March. There was an interview that took place which caused them to miss the flight, but not sufficient to suggest that they may be going abroad to perpetrate acts of terrorism.
So what's the concern now, though? Because now we understand, or there is an indication that at least one is in Syria.
Yeah, so the concern is that, you know, people on the face of it were travelling for a perfectly legitimate and standard reason, on a religious pilgrimage to the Middle East. That's what they would have told the police. But in the event changed their routing because they wanted to conceal an intention actually to travel to Syria to, you know, to potentially join a terrorist organisation. So this is an extremely difficult area for the law enforcement agencies, and what we rely on very much is the public giving us the intelligence and the information, people that know the families involved who can inform the police in good enough time to enable us to intervene in the first place.
The thing is, I can't imagine what security officers will be asking a family that is intent, if this family were intent, to go out and fight on behalf of IS in Syria or fight in Syria, that would make the family admit to what it was doing, admit to its true intentions. I mean, what probing questions are being asked, if any?
Well, precisely. This is the problem. It's extremely difficult in border control to assess intent. So we do have a range of security measures in place, such as security search, but we rely very much on intelligence and information. Now, if somebody has come forward and indicated to us through actionable intelligence that people are travelling for terrorism purposes, then there's more likely that we're going to be able to act. And of course, you know, powers have recently been conferred on the border force officers and the police to confiscate passports, at least temporarily, to try to address this problem. But it's not just a problem that the UK are facing. I spend a lot of time travelling around talking to, you know, border security conferences, and this is something that's a problem in America, Canada, in Europe, in Australia, where we're trying to identify our own nationals, 99.9% of whom, remember, are travelling for perfectly legitimate reasons, and trying to identify the needle in the haystack that's actually a terrorist.
So what would you be asked if authorities were suspicious of a family or a group of people travelling through? What would they ask?
Well, essentially, you'll be looking at the ticketing, you'll be looking at the routing, you'll be looking at the family connections, and you'll be looking to see whether or not there is a pattern of behaviour in terms of contacts made, which sets off an investigative procedure. And so this is no different in many respects to another investigation. But remember, at the airport, there's only a very limited amount of time available to officers. There has to be a reason to exercise a Schedule 7 stop in the first place, and that's why I can't stress enough how important it is that the public provide the police with this information and intelligence to give them a better chance of stopping people.
OK, Tony Smith, former head of UK Border Force, thank you very much for talking to us on Breakfast.